All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series. The QA, obviously standing for question and answer. That's the really important part, as we like to make this an interactive conversation. Start our week off right, looking back over the last couple days of tech news. Maybe news broke over the weekend, or we got some big stories breaking this morning. Some stuff that I've just literally been adding to the show notes and the lineup this week. While in the chat in the pre-show, we got a lot going on, so I don't want to gild too many lilies and get stuck on too many tangents. But of course, we like to extend that welcome. Hopefully, we're all doing well. Simon in our chat is apparently recovering from surgery, and I'll try to keep the blood pressure low. But you know, news is news, so I don't know how well that's gonna go. Maybe don't listen this week, Simon. Maybe that's okay if you're recovering from some sort of heart condition or surgery. You don't need to get the blood pressure up. But everyone else, really glad to see people in the chat. We're seeing some fun conversations already. Just a quick roll call. Jimmy Fire Dragon, I'm seeing David Lockwood saying, hey, Juan and everybody. Bradley Larcher's bumping around. Sun John, Ron Guido, PP Joker. Simon says Hypno. Georgie saying, hey, I'm done with my holiday, so I guess now I can watch your show while we're at work. I was seeing Anthony saying good morning, Pontus P saying hello, people. Yellow from H2O Taku. I said Bradley. Sean P wishing everyone a good morning all. I need to find some more opportunities to dig into Sean's pockets. Sean's good people. I just like making his budgets stretch a little harder than they need to. Hey, everybody. Oh, Stevie Coleman saying sup from NM. I'm assuming that's New Mexico, because that's good. 505 represent. Brian Billings saying hello everyone, happy Monday. Darcy saying sup Juan, happy Monday. So we got a really fun crew. I already like all these names. I like all the names. we have a good time. I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. Again, with a daughter who is now really focusing on athletics, it was a lot of softball and practices, and we had a late game on Saturday, which is tough for 9 and 10-year-olds. I gotta tell you, I keep making this quip, and it keeps proving to be more and more accurate. But as a dude in his 40s, as an old, it is getting harder and harder to keep up with the athleticism of 9-year-olds. I am arthritic, and like I'm getting down into a catcher stance to help warm up pitchers, and I'm helping my daughter because she wants to be a catcher, and we're running drills, and I'm teaching like running form, like we're doing like actual like sprinting drills and stuff, and then I can't walk the next day. So I really gotta lose a little weight and then get back into like some yoga and some strength conditioning again. It's pretty rough. So let me get this. Oh, Stevie, watching your channel while working at UNM. Okay? I know I said I wasn't gonna get into tangents. Excuse me. Stevie, I don't know where you work at UNM, but literally my very first experiences in broadcast, in voiceover, in audio and production were I was one of the world's first online news presenters for the Daily Lobo. So the Daily Lobo was, I think, only the second college site back when I, was in college, because that was a long time ago. Daily Lobo was the second. We had a Real Player plugin. So you could read the top news stories, the top news headlines, or you could hear like a broadcast, like a presenter, not quite a news anchor. I wasn't the one investigating all of the news, but I was a presenter. And I was one of those voices. It was I think we were only one of 3 college websites that was doing any kind of streaming media. I forget who it was. There was one college that was doing video, and everyone was so, oh man, they're doing video broadcasts. It was back in the day of Real Player. So if that gives you a clue how old I am, it's just a nice little, that was such a sweet little homecoming moment there. I don't know what you do at UNM, but you know, that's my home turf. So click that right there. Sorry. I was like, no tangents this week. And immediately we're 5 minutes into the show. Sean P., I have been strong this year. Juan, Samsung, and Google have not done enough for me to dig in my pockets. I'm proud of myself for now. I am very proud of you. And I think that this is a really important year. We started this year pointing out how so many phones really haven't been true upgrades, right? You might get a more powerful chip, but then maybe you lose some camera tech, or you get a more powerful chip, but then something changes up with the design or the battery or the charging. Something has always been a compromise. And I really feel from 2024 to 2025, even with the incredible performance that we're seeing in the silicon, because that's going to be a major topic for this week's show, is new silicon that's coming out the end of this year and will be powering all of the phones for next year, except for Google. It's been a lot of lateral moves, and I really believe that when we start talking about chips and silicon and parts and distribution, especially in the international supply trade, 2026 is probably going to be even more like 2025. Every manufacturer is going to look at how can we strip more features from our phones and arrive at a lower build cost while keeping the MSRPs similar. So people will be buying more for less. It is the main tactic everyone's going to be copying from Apple. So, Sean, with you not succumbing to Google and Samsung phone stuff, we got to find some other things. Like maybe it's time Sean gets more into VR. Or maybe it's time Sean starts playing with gaming handhelds. Or maybe it's time Sean really gets into like cinema AR glasses. Because you've got some disposable income if you're not buying lots of phones. I love this plan, Sean. I am here for you. From Curmo13. Wow, he's just on it. I don't have much time. When are you talking about the new chip? It will be the last story of the podcast. So check back in like 80 minutes, and we'll probably be full on into our discussion of the Dimensity. From Hello Moto, I do not need any more power. I'd rather something that has the power of a phone from a few years ago, but uses half the power. So I've started really trying to delineate that in my reviews, and even down into how we talk about it is like performance versus power. And I'm trying to use power to indicate how much electricity it draws, and performance to be how much it can accomplish per second. And I think a lot of folks would absolutely, ever since the Snapdragon 865, we've been saying this in communities like these. We would want to keep Snapdragon 865 tiers of performance. Like that is still overkill powerful for a lot of consumer needs out there. But with all of these foundry improvements and chip sizes and reductions, like it would be nice if we could focus in for maybe a generation or two, keeping the same level of performance and then just getting all of those power improvements, power draw improvements, a chip that can run cooler, that can get better battery life. And we could take 2 years off. And I think even us techies would be pretty good with that. Instead of a phone that is 30% more powerful, I've got a phone that is the same performance, but it uses half the electricity. I don't see a problem with that. Even with me rendering 4K video, trying to use desktop modes, editing raw files in, Photomate, like I record podcasts on my phone. I don't need 30% more compute power to accomplish that. I was doing that in 2017. It's really not hard. So I'm gonna take a little sip of coffee. We're gonna get into, I literally only have one thing for housekeeping, and then we're gonna jam because we got some news, and I do wanna get to this new chip from MediaTek and some very late breaking news, just getting us started here right at the top of the show. From Anthony. Oh man, Sean, if you want to burn some cash, Anthony might have the right recommendation. Come join the audiophile club cult. LOL. I just did review those. What was it? The Meze 105 Silva. Man, there aren't many prettier ways to spend $500. Those headphones are so nice. They're real. Hey, Sean, if we want to chat some real nice headphones, you just let me know. And Mr. Maug, I introduced my friend to Game Hub so he can play Silk Song on his S24 Ultra. Now he doesn't need to keep his laptop plugged in to play it for hours. And Mr. Maug, this is one of those things. I want you to double check with your buddy. I actually don't know. Someone please let me know if you're on Team Samsung. If you load up an app like Game Hub, does Samsung properly recognize that as a game that then you can do bypass charging? Because that'd be even better. If your friend's playing Silksong, he can plug in his S24 Ultra. The battery won't charge. He'll take wear and tear off the battery, but he'll be able to play unlimited while plugged in. Again, it's the next phase. If we're going to start emulating PC performance and PC games on our phones, that's an even bigger hit to our battery, and we don't want it charge cycling while we're playing something that's really using up that SoC power. So just double check with him. If you can do bypass charging, that actually is a kindness. It's going to kind of keep his battery healthier longer. Oh, Gabaletta, absolutely. I think the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is the true successor to the SD865. Anytime we can skip over Samsung's Foundry, we're probably in good shape. Sean, no, Anthony, no, Juan. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, some people love their ears and they love to give their ears good content, and not only good content, but the best representation and reproduction of that content. And, some people choose not to. And that's fine. That's fine if that's what you want to do, Sean. It's okay if that's how you want to be. Some people love their ears, and we like to support that. Pieces of flair. So, one bit of housekeeping. Literally one thing got out because I am in heck on a sponsored video, and I am totally locked up on 2 other reviews that I'm trying to get out the door. But this one was near and dear to my heart. This is public on patreon.com/somegadgetguy and somegadgetguy.com. Shopping for Superman director interview, Wes Easton on comic book shops and silly superheroes. So this last Friday, Superman. I really liked the new Superman movie, and it got its official streaming release on HBO Max, whatever we're going to become, Max, HBO, LMNOP. It was not the only comic book film to get a streaming and distribution launch on Friday, and it was not the only comic book focused film with the name Superman in the title. There is this really charming documentary called Shopping for Superman, and it just so happens that it was directed and produced by a good friend of mine. So Wes Easton was my producer while I was cutting content over at Newegg, and I'm speaking about him in the past tense. He is one of my all-time favorite producers. Like, I'm really proud of the work that we did together. I think he had a really keen eye for putting together some really cool stuff. We were just big old nerds. We would often get in trouble because we'd be on set kind of messing around, and then we would just go off on like a 30-minute conversation about like The Simpsons or some other type of like film series or something like that. So this has been a labor of love. He has been working on and producing and shooting and editing this documentary since I was at Newegg. That was years ago. I want to say he officially started back in like 2018. So this has just been a passion project for him, and it's a documentary about the impact of comic book shops. So it's the history of how we've sold comics, of how the rise of retail space for comics actually encouraged an explosion of new comic book titles. Literally, the access that a shop owner would have to directly sell a book to a consumer meant that artists and comic publishers could take bigger risks. If they didn't have to rely on just the safe distribution models, like we'll put a stand in a drugstore and it'll be filled with Archie comics. We wouldn't have things like Image Comics. We wouldn't have things like the original run of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If there wasn't some kind of way to have like a curated comic fan working a retail space, a lot of these things wouldn't exist. So his documentary is this incredible. I actually got a little emotional getting to the end of this documentary. And so he came on and we chatted for about an hour. And he shared some really funny thoughts, like part of a conversation that we'd had in the past about how Batman is really silly. There are comments in there, and we talk a little bit about some of the new superhero films and superhero fatigue. And at the same time, while we're getting a little burnt out on superhero movies, the actual comics publishing industry has never been more aggressive. Like the books that are being published today are absolutely wild. And he's got some great recommendations. Like I actually did pick up a new series just from our conversation there. And if you'd like to hear what his recommendations were, you can hit this. There's an audio version of the conversation and of course the video version of the conversation. And you might get to see me in my, I think, 1989 Halloween costume, Star Trek The Next Generation jumper that my mom made. It's a handmade Starfleet uniform, and I might have a bowl haircut and a Geordie LaForge visor. You don't know. That could be in this interview that I published with me and Wes. Oh, we got a shout out. We got Gadget Goddess jumping in and waving to a couple folks in the chat. We got Twin Folk saying howdy, folks. I hope Twin Folk has something in the mail coming to him soon from me. I'm really curious to hear his thoughts on it. Oh no, Gabaletta, touching on the whole PD on Samsung phones, the Game Booster app does not recognize the Game Hub app as a game, so it does not trigger the charge bypass. That is so dumb. I really hate how Samsung does that. On a OnePlus or a Vivo, I can add any app to their game profile, and then I can tell it bypass charging. So if I want to edit video on a Vivo, I can tell it when it's plugged in, just don't charge the phone, because editing video can be a little taxing. Well, even more, like let's say I wanted to do desktop mode, I could bypass charge that way and then plug into a larger monitor. That would be fine. I do not understand why Samsung limits what you can. That bypass charging is such a critical feature. I don't get it. I do not understand. Red hydrangea. Why isn't bypass charge something that is always active? Like on a gaming phone, you can just turn it on and it works system wide. I don't understand, and I wish I had a better answer for you. Samsung be Samsung like that. Bionic Scoop saying good morning all. Oh, Gabaletta also saying, funnily, Samsung does recognize Yuzu, Citra, and Eden emulators as games. Maybe it'll eventually get added to their approved list. It is so frustrating that it's not. So, hold on one second. I'm going to be coughing a lot. I just have this dry patch in the back of my throat, and I can't shake it. So, that was housekeeping. I'm going to have a lot of stuff coming out this week, and I know I've said that in the past, but I literally am sitting on edits for 5 different videos, and each of them are now starting to get past that roadblock, and they're going to start coming out. Some headphones, some phones. I have a Pixel 10 comparison coming out soon. So there will be a lot of housekeeping to talk about next week, but this week, everything that we're going to discuss in the show notes will be available on somegadgetguy.com. So for the blog post for this week's podcast. And of course, I like to do now a cut down, clearing out the biology, no interruptions version of the podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/somegadgetguy. Or, I mean, if you're fine, there's an audio version that goes out public, but I don't spend as much time cleaning that stuff up. So let's jump in. Let's hit some news, and we got a lot of news to cover. So whenever there's politics stuff, especially focused on the FCC, I feel it's worth mentioning. And I've been independent of people who watch my podcast. I have been in no less than 5 conversations with people in our circles of family and friends who have been outraged over the recent political policy of this administration as it pertains to television shows and our regulatory agency, the FCC. If you've been paying attention to my podcast, or if you've been listening to these intros, because I always start with the politics, I try to get that out of the way at the beginning of the show, we wouldn't be surprised, would we? As soon as we saw Ajit Pai in charge of the FCC under Trump's first term, we've known what the playbook was. Regulatory capture, sow discontent, show how government doesn't work, do wacky things with a regulatory agency, but then you point that agency's policy towards enriching mega corporations. As soon as Jessica Rosenworcel stepped down from the FCC, and I was viciously upset that she didn't finish out her term, as soon as Brendan Carr was in charge of the FCC, we commented he was going to use the FCC as a way to punish political enemies. We should not be surprised by this at all, that now it's starting to happen. That's what we warned people at the very beginning of Trump's second term. That's what happens when you have regulatory capture and an administration that is trying to grab power from other institutions. Government works when it's an amorphous blob of tiny little commissions and agencies that don't have any kind of singular power, checks and balances. It stops the executive branch from just wholesale punishing someone because they don't like what they said on a news broadcast. That's what the FCC should be. So we shouldn't be terribly surprised that after a recent event with a late night comics talk show, this is a headline coming by way of Ars Technica, written up by my man crush John Brodkin. After getting Jimmy Kimmel suspended, FCC chair threatens ABC's The View. Carr appeared yesterday on the radio show hosted by Scott Jennings, who describes himself as the last man standing athwart the liberal mob. Jennings asked Carr whether The View and other ABC programs violate FCC rules and made reference to President Trump calling on NBC to cancel Fallon and Myers. All right, here we go. Quote, a lot of people think there are other shows on ABC that maybe run afoul of this more often than Jimmy Kimmel. I'm thinking specifically of The View, and President Trump himself has mentioned Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers at NBC. Do you have comments on those shows? And are they doing what Kimmel did Monday night? And is it even worse on those programs in your opinion? And I'm sorry, I'm getting down to the quote. When you look at these other TV shows, what's interesting is the FCC does have a rule called the Equal Opportunity Rule, which means, for instance, if you're in the run-up to an election and you have one partisan elected official on, you have to give equal time, equal opportunity to the opposing partisan politician, Carr said. But none of this is any kind of admonishment. What we're seeing is an continued escalation of what's happening in this space from the people that are so concerned about censorship, right? We recently covered the GOP's constant calling for investigation into Google because their fundraising emails must be getting censored by Gmail. They must be getting put into the spam folders. So what we have here is a pretty clear indication that as major corporations are looking at mergers, yeah, we can't tell them not to say something, but we can say, hey, you know, if this late night comic or if this roundtable discussion show or if this, you know, talk show keeps criticizing a certain elected official, I don't know that we'll be able to approve a merger. And this is the collusion or the influence that government can exert over corporations. So either you play it. Again, it's kind of like a protection scheme or a protection racket. Like, we're not going to tell you what to say. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Free speech, you know, I guess that's how it goes. But sure would be a shame if something happened to your to your licenses and you couldn't broadcast anymore. Or, sure would be a shame if you just couldn't get that merger approved. I don't have anything to do with that because, I'm at the FCC, but, it would it'd just be disappointing. Just getting in the way of business like that. We just want to see good, wholesome business, capitalist business. And that's what we're in for. So, anytime someone's like, oh, but both sides bad, when Rosenworcel was at the head of the FCC, we were trying to get Wi-Fi for students. We were trying to get more accurate broadband coverage maps so we could see which communities were actually lacking broadband access. We were trying to reinstitute net neutrality so that major corporations couldn't decide for you how your traffic should flow. We were looking at things. Oh, we were trying to get, with the FCC and the FTC, we were trying to get things like click to cancel rules so you could cancel your subscriptions easier. That's not necessarily the FCC, but the FCC was in support of that. And the FTC was in support of not letting your ISP suck up all of your personal behavior data and sell it off. The FTC commission that we read up on, where they investigated major ISPs, internet service providers, and cell phone providers and said, hey, everything you do, they're watching, registering, cataloging, and selling off. We were trying to put a stop to that on the left side of the aisle. So every time you feel like, oh, but I don't care, I'm not going to vote, or I'll vote Republican is like a meme, jokey vote. And then stuff like this starts happening, and you're like, oh, but that sucks. Well, we tried to warn you. We tried to warn you that both sides are not the same. It sucks at the congressional level when you can see senators that are obviously being influenced by big moneyed interests. But you've got to think about everything below that too. The commissions, the regulators, the chairs, the attorneys, the judges, the courts. Both sides, not the same. We get more stuff from one side, and billionaires get more stuff from the other side. So if you want to really support some positive action or some positive change, this is what needs to be fought. And it can't keep being a surprise. See, people are paying attention to the FCC and Brendan Carr now. It's easy to be outraged after the fact, but we've been trying to warn since Ajit Pai was at the head of the FCC. It just, the first Trump administration wasn't able to dig down quite as aggressively, quite as fast. The second term has been wildly more chaotic. So, this is pretty bad. And what sucks is there's not even a good comeuppance. It's not like I can sit there and say to conservatives hey, when the shoe's on the other foot, you're really not going to like what happens. Because I don't think this is how the FCC should be run, and I don't want a Democrat president to operate in the White House like Trump has. I would like to get to corrective actions that fix things and get more benefits and more help and more assistance to citizens of the United States. But as soon as things calm down, the crazy machines start ratcheting up all of the ill will and ill sentiment. And this is also a problem where the Democrats have zero skill at messaging outside of AOC and Bernie Sanders, who's speaking up on the left. Actually, even just the centrist. That's not even left. Bernie is not a radical anywhere else in the world. So, anyway, that's our one big dicey political story. Let me take a drink of coffee, and then we've got our less dicey political story after that. And I just want to end this off. Sorry, I know I said we were moving on. I want to end this off with one last point. What you've seen when you vote and then you detach yourself from the political process, the people you vote for are going to be influenced by whoever sends them the most money. Voting is only the first step. When I see a Democrat elected, that's not the end of my involvement. I've sent significantly more messages to the FCC, to the FTC. I've reported companies. I've reached out to my state attorney general. I get way more active when liberals are in charge because I helped elect them. They answer to me. Voting is the first step. I haven't been as active in sending out all these messages with conservatives in power at the top levels of government because they're not going to listen to policy suggestions from someone like me that run completely counter to what they're trying to accomplish. So even if you're a conservative and you vote for conservatives and you don't like what they're doing, the answer isn't to shrug or whine about it on social media. The answer is they are beholden to you. The beginning of your relationship is voting for them. Then the job really starts, where as citizens, if we're conscientious and we're paying attention to this stuff, we hammer those points home and we stay on top of them to see that they do what they promised they would do. And when they step afoul that, we get loud and we make sure they know we're not pleased. So yeah, I mean, the bare minimum is showing up to vote. But then you don't just sit back and complain, but I don't like what they're doing. We were here on this podcast where I was complaining about the Biden administration not getting an FCC chairman for 3 years. The FCC was in deadlock for 3 of the 4 years of Biden's term. That's not okay. We should be mad about that. But if the answer to you is, well, I guess I have to vote for a Republican then, well, no, that doesn't affect any positive change. The answer is we need to get even more on top of people in Congress to get their jobs done because they keep washing their hands of their jobs and we keep giving them free healthcare for it. I think we really need to look at that pension plan and their healthcare, and I think an elected senator or a congressional member should have to buy their healthcare on the open market from the district they represent. So if you're a really old person elected from a conservative state, you got to get your health care the same way your constituents would. No more of this taxpayer-funded in perpetuity perk. No more of that. I think we really need to start looking at, you represent this state, well, you're a part of that state. You're in the same boat as your constituents. This is the stuff that's driving me crazy. So, less dicey political news. This is just a primer. We've got to keep an eye on this. A couple weeks back, we talked about the Google antitrust, where they were potentially, where a potential conclusion of that court case could have been Chrome getting split off from Google. And the judge overseeing that case totally whiffed it. Totally whiffed it. Acknowledged that Google is running afoul, antitrust. Google is actively, their business has reached that monopolistic status, and they're using their authority and their presence in this space to harm competition. And the biggest penalty that they could come up with was Google has to share their search data with competitors, which is irrelevant in an age where every company, especially major company at the top of search, is trying to do AI, which is just ripping off actual people's content. It is a completely inadequate corrective measure. It changes Google's business practices not at all. Because they can claim, well, this is AI data. This isn't search data, it's AI data. So we don't have to share that, which is still garbage. I mean, just the fact that we'd even be arguing about that. But we'll share our search data, which has increasingly been useless. I mean, how often are we now jumping into Google searches and then seeing, like, even when I get past the ads and I get past the AI, I'm still not getting to good information that helps me find what I'm looking for. So the fact that Google was properly addressed as causing this antitrust violation, it means now we've got legal precedent, though. So this is coming up, Michael Liedtke. I do not know how to pronounce your name, Michael. I apologize. Written up over at the Associated Press. Google faces antitrust deja vu as U.S. seeks to break up its digital advertising business. After deflecting the U.S. Justice Department's attack on its illegal monopoly in online search, Google is facing another attempt to dismantle its internet empire in a trial focused on its abusive tactics in advertising. The trial, scheduled to begin Monday in Alexandria, Virginia federal court, will revolve around the harmful conduct that resulted in U.S. District Judge Leonie Brimkins declaring parts of Google's digital advertising technology to be an illegal monopoly. The judge found that Google has been engaging in behavior that stifles competition to the detriment of online publishers that depend on the system for revenue. So, it's what I would hope would have played out. Google is operating an illegal monopoly, and they're allowed to continue operating their illegal monopoly. Well, in court cases, that first half of the statement means there can be continued investigation, there can be continued penalties, other people can look into those business practices, and every time Google walks into a courtroom now, they were already ruled an illegal monopoly. So now we have to see how this next one plays out, and it's probably going to be, I don't know. So again, one would hope that because of the legal precedent set before, that the court case won't be another multiple year endeavor with tons of differing arguments and making appeals to higher courts. Hopefully we'll see some kind of examination of this business practice sooner, since the first court case has already ruled Google an illegal monopoly. I'm hoping that means that we can abbreviate some of this. You can go into court and be like, but you're an illegal monopoly. And Google really doesn't have much to argue against because, yeah, they were already ruled an illegal monopoly. So keep it on your radars. The idea of parts of Google's business getting split off from Alphabet's core umbrella group is not done just because one judge absolutely whiffed it. And again, this one could be even dicier because the main source of their revenue is the pressure they can put on advertisers, because that's where most of their money comes from. If that suddenly is in danger of becoming a separate fork, like that has to be carved out of Alphabet, what does the rest of Alphabet do? Losing Chrome actually would have been way better if it took pressure off of losing their advertising business. Again, this kind of reminds me of previous like mega court cases, like when Verizon sued the government over the open internet order. You're like, yeah, good, you stopped this low-level, kind of toothless regulation, but that fostered a much stricter and a much more aggressive policy that's now being implemented at the state level. So good job, Verizon, you kind of played yourself. If you just let that low-level federal policy through, it would have been better for your business in the long term, and we wouldn't have been having these debates at the state level. But you had to push it, and you won your court case, but now it's going to be worse for you. I think Google losing Chrome would be way better than Google losing ads. John Gao asking, but will they see the search engine market and ad tech market as the same market? This is where we have a concern. That kind of depends on the judge. If the lawyers can clock a judge who is savvy enough to kind of understand the differences in those business models and presentations, then I think we've got a pretty clear argument to saying, hey, yeah, let them keep their browser, but how Google generates revenue through selling selling ads and manipulating search, that's different. That is a different piece. Because I can go into, again, you go into the courtroom and you pull up Chrome and you show the judge, look, I can click this button and now the search is not Google, it's Bing. Now the search is not Google, it's DuckDuckGo, right? So if the lawyers could get down to that level and kind of spoon feed a judge who might not be that tech savvy, I don't think it would necessarily be too difficult to start driving those wedges in and say, this is one component, this is another, this is another. Google tries to make this look like one holistic package, but it's not. And this is how we can split this piece off. They can keep their browser, they can keep their search, but how they generate revenue over here needs to be a separate business so that there isn't some kind of confluence over influence, and how these different parts can push out other competition. And then from there, it would be hilarious. Like, we're going to carve out their their AdSense becomes its own brand, its own company. And Google can make their own new ad company with none of the shared assets or intellectual property of AdSense. And AdSense can sue Google if they start trying to copy the old AdSense business model. I'd be fine with that. Let them come up with something new, you know, bootstraps and pick themselves up and start fresh and all these hardy, rugged, individualistic things that tech leaders and innovators love to foster on poor people. I think they could do with a taste of their own medicine. Yeah, John Gow, again, this is what I mean. Google is so vertically integrated in the advertising industry, even if it is broken up, I doubt it will only be a tiny piece of it. Example, the Google Ad Manager. Maybe. But again, that I think that how far they can reach and how far they can correct Google's malfeasance will come down to the judge. And if the judge is savvy enough to get this stuff. So this was early breaking news. This I added to the show lineup. I don't fully understand the whole terms of this deal. I caught it on Yahoo Finance, but this was originally written up by Alexandra Levine at Bloomberg. Let me click this in. TikTok's algorithm to be secured by Oracle in Trump-backed deal. The arrangement outlined by the White House official in a statement Monday seeks to ensure that the American buyers control TikTok's recommendation software in the U.S. following a divestiture by its Chinese parent ByteDance. Owners of the US-based TikTok would lease a copy of the algorithm from ByteDance that Oracle would then retrain from the ground up, according to the official. So, the ongoing saga. First of all, there's going to be yet another extension. So, nothing that Trump does is meaningful in any significant way. Oh, I'm going to give, excuse me, I'm going to give TikTok 90 days. And then we've got to find a new buyer. And then if they can't, then we got to shut TikTok down. Oh, they couldn't find another buyer. Okay, cool. I'm going to give them another 90 days. Okay, well, they might have found a buyer. We can't say who. It's a shadowy consortium of moneyed interests that are coming together anonymously to buy TikTok. No one should be concerned by that, by the way. That TikTok, one of the fastest growing social media video sharing sites, is going to get bought by a group of unknown individuals. You don't know who they are. I'm sure they're all real cool people and companies. But then, because it's US TikTok, we need to make sure that TikTok is recommending and promoting US interests in the algorithms, in the recommendation engine. So when TikTok is functional in the United States, we're going to put the algorithm retraining in Oracle's hands. There's no mention of how Oracle is going to do this or who is working with Oracle outside of administration officials. Excuse me. So there will be some communication with this presidential administration and Oracle to make sure that U.S. interests are being fostered on TikTok and through the TikTok's recommendation engine. But you know, outside of that, we can't really comment too specifically on any of the finer points of this. But we also know it's taking so long to finalize this deal that Trump is extending yet another like 120 days on TikTok sale. So it's just clown shoes all the way around, and it shows just how horrifically destructive algorithmically sorted social media has become. I get it. People are apathetic and they're kind of lazy. They want to open up a thing and then just be served some kind of entertainment. And I get that. It makes me sad because I really took a lot of care and I thought it was really fun to kind of build like an RSS feed. And then I had news and stories and videos and things that I really cared about. And that's the content that I enjoyed consuming. We used to have this kind of share sensibility on the internet. And it was nerdy and it was geeky and it was also immediately co-opted by moneyed interests. But things like Stumble Upon, your value on Stumble Upon was verified by other people on Stumble Upon who liked the things that you shared. And it became a good engine for discovering new content. Wow, someone really digs deep into stuff on the internet and finds really wacky and crazy things. I'm going to follow this person because I like the things they find, and then I find new stuff too. Instead, turning over that discovery apparatus to social media algorithms has always been horrifically destructive to communities. It destroyed interest in Reddit. Reddit is a husk of what it used to be. And it really does look like what it's become, just a place for AI companies to scrape data on human interactions, while it's also facing the same issues with regurgitated content and bots and manipulated communities. We can see what happened to Twitter. Facebook is a mess of slop, and slop that is being used to train more slop in an ever descending de-evolutionary quality of content. And now it's TikTok's turn. This is why we can't have anything cool. Again, if you want to find those human interactions, discovering new content, really authentic and earnest individuals who care about what they're posting. They're not just poop posting because that's how you get rage bait traffic, and that's what Threads will pay you for. Facebook is happy to give you money if you generate engagement. You gotta leave. You gotta get off of these platforms. I say this multiple times a month, but I learn more, I find more cool stuff, I see a better international community of conversation over on Mastodon. And oh no, I had to set up an account on a server and find a few people to follow and follow a few hashtags to get my feed populated with new content. It didn't just spoon feed me right from the jump. But this stuff's going to keep getting worse, and I don't know what's going to push people out of it or what's going to push people off of it. I'm supposedly, one of these rage haters who just doesn't like anything popular, but, I kind of ascribe to the idea that if you just live the life you want, if you just are the change you want to see in the world, that it's better for yourself and it's better for people you interact with. So I guess keep using TikTok for now. It'll eventually become a propaganda arm of the United States government. And for people who just could not get off of Twitter and could not get off of Reddit and could not get off of Facebook, they'll complain. It's going to keep getting worse. It's going to keep getting suckier. And if only I could make the most minorest of efforts to go to the one social media platform of platforms that isn't organized this way. But then I wouldn't have all of my followers and internet points, and I need that. So then I guess we're stuck. It's really a bummer. All right, that's enough of that. This one I just want to pop in here because I think it's silly, and I don't know. I'll be curious to see if there are even any comments. Mr. Maug, I still never downloaded TikTok. So I have a TikTok account literally just to lock up my username. It's the only reason I have it. I've shared other videos that I've produced for like YouTube. I had a video that went viral on Instagram, so I shared that over on TikTok. I use it not really at all. It's just regurgitated content that I've produced for other channels. I've never installed the phone app. I use it through a browser on my desktop. I can't stand short form video. I really can't. Just this whole action of I'm swiping through videos until I maybe land on something that I like, and then if I stop for a second, even if I didn't like that video, the algorithm takes that as some positive aspect. And then my feed is even more populated with stuff that I probably didn't like. I do not understand why people value. Again, it's this. I like having curated content, but algorithms don't curate. They just look at content types, and especially they're good at getting you content that will piss you off. I don't understand it. They are outrage machines that keep you invested in being outraged, and that's horrifically unhealthy. But then you go to other places and you're like, oh no, humans are actually involved in this content curation and they have opinions on things. And maybe I don't agree with the opinion, but I like how they're curating content that real people have made. And that still exists. People keep acting like it's inevitable that we just have to let all this stuff die off. But old school social media still exists and it's way more fun. You just have to put in that little modicum of effort to be a part of it and not just sit back and expect, well, everyone's going to spoon feed me my entertainment. But again, I mean, I'm talking, I'm literally talking to the people that I care enough to even know that these alternatives exist. Like, I've got some people in here talking about blue sky and stuff. Like, I know I'm already preaching to the choir, but until we make this a bigger part of our conversations and we make more noise about it, then everyone else is just going to keep, they're going to be mad for a minute. And then they're just going to eat whatever the Trump administration tells Oracle to feed to TikTok. Oh, because there's nothing I can do. I need my random hits of dopamine as I scroll through endless feeds of video content. That's so dumb. Oh, on the road. Juan, I'm okay being outraged as long as I'm listening to you. I'm so sorry I turned these into therapy, because if I don't vent this stuff, then it gets real bad. And Michael C., my only problem with Blue Sky is that it's a band-aid solution because it's owned by a venture capitalist. He could sell it tomorrow or add more advertisements. Mastodon would be better. So when I say that, like at the ends of my videos, I spend most of my time on Mastodon, a little on the Blue Skis. Anytime you've got that, it's a cool new site, you want to hang out there because it's cool and new. How are they going to generate revenue? I donate a tiny bit of money to the person who hosts my Mastodon server. And that's how they keep their server running, just through donations. There is no content curation AI algorithm. We pay money to operate a server. There is no oversight. I mean, you can report people for like hate speech and stuff like that. You can block other servers that are fostering misinformation, but there's no, like, that's one of the problems that's happening on Blue Sky right now. There's a lot of controversy over how their content moderation policies are being utilized. Blue Sky will never be sustainable. It will eventually have to turn heel and make money just like any other popular social media platform. It's why we've seen Tumblr fall into irrelevance and Twitter getting sold internally to keep its valuation high, basically just robbing other Elon Musk companies of value. Twitter sold itself to Grok. Grok is an AI company, XAI, and that way they could say Twitter is still worth $40 billion. It was never worth that much money. Oh, it's so stupid. But he's playing a shell game with other people's money. Because Elon Musk isn't putting any of his own cash in the mix. He's not dumb enough to risk his own money, but he's happy for other investors to say, oh, but I think Musk and Grok and Twitter. It's so dumb. So, this next story, I'm kind of curious what people think, because I think this is silly and dumb. This is written up by who wrote it though? Is written up by Amy Johar over at Mobile World Live. Nokia names former Intel exec to lead AI push. Nokia named Pallavi Mahajan. I have mispronounced that name. I do apologize. As its new chief technology and AI officer, the former Intel executive charged with heading up one of two new business units aimed at sharpening its focus on AI innovation and business development. Now, I am not tremendously familiar with Mahajan's work? I just read that headline. Nokia, a name that has not been particularly competitive in the broader mainstream space for a little bit. Names former Intel executive. Intel, not doing so hot right now, to lead AI push. Nokia, way far behind on all of the rug pull investor bait scams that shareholders and investors are really hot on right now. They're late to getting into the AI. And so they hired someone from Intel, who was also a company tragically late to all of the big AI hype, to start their big new push to get the AI better over at Nokia. I can't think, again, I'm being really snarky here. I am cynical and sardonic. I have zero faith in cloud-based data center AI. I think that this is another rug pull that is going to destroy the environment and wreck clean drinking water and just gobble up electricity while people are dumping tons of money into something that has never delivered, does not generate revenue or profits to the level of investing in data centers. I can't think of a headline, were I investing in tech companies like this specifically, I can't think of a headline better formatted to convince me to run screaming from a Nokia initiative. Let's say I had any investment in Nokia. Were I to see a headline like that, I would be rushing to my trading app, my investment app, or my brokerage app, and pulling every dime that I could out of that Nokia investment. I can't think of anything that gives me less confidence in a company's future direction than this headline right here. Now, I need to preface, this podcast is not a good source for investment advice. I am sharing my personal bias and my preferences and my opinions. But what part of this sounds like a good plan? I can't think of a piece of this that engenders any confidence in the direction of this company. The AI bubble is starting its process of bursting, and we have to hope that it doesn't completely tank the economy like the housing market did in 2008. But I think there are enough indicators to suggest that that's possibly what could happen. And everyone's just waiting till the last possible second before they try to pull their money out. If you can start divesting your investments now and looking at other future commodities and things like that too, I would seriously look at what your strategy is to get out of high technology investments. I think it could be real bad. And I don't think you want to try and play a game of chicken with the market, because that's already sort of lopsided and rigged. Government officials will get their money out first because they're also the ones who set policy. So there's, a huge conflict of interest with elected government officials being able to perform insider trading. But then billionaires and executives will get their money out second. And then everyone else is going to be left holding the bag. And you're going to see the stock price plummet before you can really react to the market. But everyone who was already rich and fat on this stuff, well, they're good. They're fine. They're taken care of. And then those companies will get taxpayer-funded bailouts. But the people who invested at the lower levels, they're going to get burned. They're going to get screwed. So as much love as I had for the Nokia name, they're not doing anything in this space consumer facing, and their current business initiatives are not tremendously exciting, and they're this late. Who are they going to bring on? Like, Facebook is struggling to bring on good, talented engineers to work on these ridiculously stupid AI initiatives, and they're pouring billions of dollars into their AI plans. Does Nokia even have $1 billion in the bank? What are they gonna fund? I am really being pissy about this. I can't. This is so dumb. Oh man, I hate it so much. From Farhan, yeah, definitely for their 5G network business. I love it. From Evictor Debs, yes, all those bad things about AI you say are true, but don't you love the capability to ask for a terrible randomly generated image of a duck smoking a cigarette at the expense of the environment? There was I think it was a New Yorker cartoon, just a really wide picture of a man walking up to his standing at his mailbox, looking at his electricity bill, and he's got his phone, and he asks his phone, "Chat GPT, why are electricity prices so high?" Yes, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I love it. I hate it because I love it. I love it because I hate it. PP Joker, yeah, Nokia isn't going anywhere with this. Whatever happened to them since their reboot of phones in the late 2010s? Well, the Nokia name was only being licensed. HMD was a small conglomerate of former Nokia executives and engineers, and they were licensing the Nokia name. But I gave up on them with the Nokia 9. As soon as they bailed on their support commitments for the Nokia 9 and that phone was left in a completely broken state, I refused to cover anything else HMD. Skyline looks like a cool phone, and I love that it's got repairability kind of built into the phone design, but I am not going to advertise or promote or discuss their products ever again until I see some kind of massive change. They put out a ton of disposable devices. There's kitsch value and there's nostalgia, and that's cute. But I want to see them actually make some headway in fixing the things that they broke. And HMD seems completely incapable of doing that. Yeah, and Victor Debs, we talked about this a little while too. I guess HMD just announced that they're leaving the US market. I was intrigued by their phones that had replaceable batteries and Qi 2. I don't know much about them otherwise though. So, irrelevant anyway. Nick Gay, there is no Nokia Mobile. Nokia Mobile is not a thing. HMD licensed the Nokia name to put on their phones, which I believe were made by Foxconn. There is no Nokia phone division. The actual phone division was sold to Microsoft and became the Lumia 950 before that tanked. While that's left of Nokia, Nokia has a camera division. I do believe they're still doing some interesting work with like VR cameras. I think Blackmagic now is just kind of sealed what the next phase of like spatial AR and VR is going to look like. But before them, there was some really wild work being done on optics and video. They have their networking business, and then I'm not sure what else they're invested in beyond that. So, I've got a pair of stories that I just want to knock out back to back because I think this is interesting. Again, this is just something we've got to kind of keep an eye on. This one written up by, dang it. Sorry, I can't catch these coughs. I'm really trying to not like keep the biology hitting your ears here. So, first written up by Ram Ear. I do not know how to pronounce that name either. Over at TechCrunch, NVIDIA pays $5 billion stake in Intel planning AI chip collaboration. So, this is a lot of money to dump on Intel right now. The companies will integrate their two architectures using NVIDIA's NVLink interface, which enables data and control code transfers between CPUs and GPUs. NVLink enables faster transfers between chips compared with other standards like PCI Express, crucial for AI applications, which require many GPUs to run together and process immense workloads. Now, I'm bringing this up in part, though. NVIDIA putting $5 billion on Intel. It's not just we've got these chips, you've got those chips, let's get those chips to talk to each other. Now what we need to watch is NVIDIA gonna put pressure on Intel's business, because there's a rumor that the new Intel Arc Celestial GPU might already be canceled, following news that NVIDIA is investing in Intel. So some of their current GPUs, the B580 and the B770, look like they're still on the roadmap. They were already being shown off. They were already being publicized. So those GPUs, the ones that like are immediately being discussed as coming to market, those look like they're still coming to market. It's the next stage of the roadmap. Looks like it might already be canceled now. Huge rock of salt, because this was reported on by Moore's Law is Dead, another one of these industry analyst leaker kinds of discussion websites. I don't know how much faith to put in that outright. The immediate replies from Intel were not very encouraging. We have no plans to blah blah corporate synergy and will keep and still important part of our business. Like all of the claptrap that you would expect following some kind of major investment or merger or acquisition or something. My feeling on this is NVIDIA is investing $5 billion. We'll never know the exact particulars of that deal, but something tells me if anything happens to Intel, NVIDIA might not get their money back, but they might have dibs on certain pieces of Intel's IP or certain parts of Intel's infrastructure. If I were cribbing some kind of deal with Intel in the tragically vulnerable state that they're in, I don't know that I'd say, well, we're going to give you $5 billion, and if you don't come through, then we're charging you interest on this $5 billion, and we want this much back. I wouldn't look for a financial return. What I would look for is IP. What is it in Intel's catalog that would really help NVIDIA right now? Cool. And this might give NVIDIA a pipeline to Intel's current executives who are all about cost cutting, right? The current moves from Intel are, how do we reduce costs to make our short-term financials look a little bit better? They're not getting new product out. They're not investing in new nodes. They're pulling commitments to new foundries and new facilities. So if we could cut GPUs off of our costs, yeah, we won't sell any GPUs now, but we wouldn't have to invest in developing new GPUs. So that's a cost savings. Our stock price should go up because we're making less stuff and making less money. If NVIDIA now has like a direct bat phone to Intel executives to put that kind of pressure on them, then these are the kind of business moves I think we might see. I can't say that that is what's happening. I don't know that I completely trust the source on this report. But now we've got to keep an eye. What does the relationship between NVIDIA and Intel look like? Because NVIDIA is already, it's silly. It's like they are a monopolistic force in GPUs. Like there is no actual practical competition. As soon as you get out of the console market where AMD reigns supreme, there is no other interest. If you're running data centers, if you're training AI models, if you're doing distributed computing work, if you're doing supercomputing work, any of these other applications that you would want a number crunching machine that resembles a GPU, AMD and Intel are irrelevant. And they're falling in gaming as well. The overall market share for gamers is overwhelmingly NVIDIA at this point too. So it's real dicey, because the only thing that makes products better, and for people who complain, like I'm not particularly impressed with the 50 series cards and the price to performance and the value they represent, but the only thing that would change that is competition. So we don't have that, so NVIDIA can kind of do whatever they want. Oh, some other people just kind of talking out some of their experiences with the HMD and Nokia. Ron Guido, NVIDIA becomes NVIDIA. I see what you did there. I like that because it's Intel. JGJ, isn't AMD rocking the PC gaming space, budget, emulation, and cost performance? AMD is crushing in consoles. AMD APUs are primarily used in consoles. They're the most popular option for handhelds, so like your Steam Decks and your Lenovo Legions. I want to say MSI, is it MSI, I think, is the main manufacturer who uses an Intel chip in their portable gaming machine. But when you look at the recent trends, because I think there was another Steam hardware survey not too long ago, AMD is slipping when it comes to gaming PCs. So someone who is building a PC isn't likely to use an AMD GPU. I don't know what the numbers look like on portables if we start talking about laptops, because AMD's integrated GPU is definitely better than Intel's, especially once you get to these new HX AI 390 chips, stuff like that. But even for having a really great AMD chip in a laptop, I think laptop sales, gaming PC laptop sales, are still dominated by having dedicated NVIDIA GPUs. I don't think we're seeing a lot of dedicated AMD laptop options. It's not that there aren't any, it's that overwhelmingly you're making a gaming laptop and it's going to have a separate component called the GPU. That GPU is probably going to be NVIDIA in what's actually being sold. So again, I have to draw this from a bunch of like analysts, like looking at sales and what products are shipped, not necessarily sold to consumers, but just shipped. And then also things like the Steam hardware survey, which is definitely an incomplete examination of the market. But I don't think AMD's GPU business I don't even think it's double digits in terms of market share right now. From what we can see, I want to say it's fallen to something like 7 or 8%. And Intel was this nice little glimmer of hope that a company could build competition, but I think it's too small to even properly track how many people might really be using Intel GPUs in their products. I mean, sorry, in their systems. So it's getting pretty bad. And again, how do you fix a monopoly? One way you don't fix it is by raising prices on consoles, which unfortunately Microsoft is doing again. This is coming directly from the Xbox support website. US console pricing updates announced September 19, 2025. Beginning on October 3rd, we will update the recommended retailer pricing for Series S and Series X consoles in the United States due to changes in the macroeconomic environment. We understand that these changes are challenging, so the price updates... beginning on October 3rd, we will update recommended retailer... Oh, they don't even say... Hold on, where is it? Oh, this is so annoying. Come on, Microsoft. Beginning on October 3rd, we will update recommended retailer pricing for Xbox Series S and Series X. Literally the first sentence from their press release here. They just used it again for the price update. So I clicked on that just to hear again that it will be updated, which is also the title. So it's 3 times in a row. They've just said, we're going to update the pricing. Pricing for controllers and headsets will remain the same. Pricing for products in all other markets will remain the same. And then pricing in the United States, updated Xbox console pricing in the United States, view PDF. There's a drop. I want you to, okay, if you're just listening to the audio version of this, let me describe what I'm seeing here. There's a little drop-down menu. So it's a tucked away headline, pricing in the United States. And then you click on this little caret and it's supposed to drop down and show you the pricing. And then it doesn't. It drops down and just does a link to a PDF. So now let's click on this PDF. This could have just been on the website. Do you see what they've done? You see how annoying this is? So you've got the headline, US console pricing updates. The first sentence, we will update the recommended retailer pricing. Price updates. Let's drop down this caret so we can see what the price updates are. Oh, we're just going to repeat the first sentence from the press release. Now, pricing in the United States. Let me drop this down so I can see what the pricing is in the United States. No, we're not going to tell you that. You have to click on a PDF that just has plain text that they could have just put on the press release. And notice how they don't actually show the price updates. So now I have opened up a PDF. This PDF is telling me what the Xbox Series S and Series X prices will be. They do not say what the old prices were. So there's only a category for new price. This is the most consumer hostile way to deliver this information, and more than anything else we've discussed this week is maybe contributing to higher blood pressure. I'm looking at my pulse rate on my smartwatch, and Microsoft, congratulations. In a week of terrible news, you've managed to get the pulse rate up higher. Okay, so an Xbox Series S 512 new price will be $399. An Xbox Series S 1 TB will now be $450. Xbox Series X Digital, $600, Series X, $650, and the new 2 terabyte Galaxy Black Special Edition is $800. So, I just want to point this out. I just recently spent some time. Oh, do I still have it under my desk? I might still have it under my desk. Let's see. I just spent some time messing around with some mini PCs. I have a review out. Come on, I don't want to like fling it. If I can help this, I'll stack the box. I just spent some time with this bad boy right here. So this is my Geekom. The brand has been really silly. Like they don't want to send anything new. They just want to send me some of their older PCs because, oh, you could make a commercial out of it on Instagram for us. And you're like, I don't want to do that. So I'm not thrilled with their PR. But I've had good experiences with Geekoms. And this is probably about depending on sales, I want to say this is between $400 and $500. It's an older, what is this? Does it actually say on the back? Oh, I don't know that it'll say on this box. Oh, I just stacked the box. It'll actually say over here. So what was this one? Yes, this is an older chip. This is the 6800H. So it is a GPU generation behind some of my favorite options like the 7000 and 8000 series AMD chips. But you could get something like this with a terabyte of storage. I think this had 32 gigs of RAM. You could wipe this and put SteamOS on it. This would be more powerful than a Steam Deck. If you were looking at AMD FSR and a living room console style experience, it works with a controller. As much money as you would spend on a Series S, you could get a mini PC that would be almost as powerful, give you great 1080p gaming, and start just going directly into more of like a PC gaming solution than a console gaming solution. I feel like the reason why they're leaning into this again, as soon as the tariffs were announced, Microsoft saw a huge surge of Xbox sales. People concerned like, oh no, prices on consoles will go up. I'm going to buy ahead. And then they raised prices and a bunch of people felt great. Like, oh man, I'm so glad I got that Xbox before the prices went higher. And I worry that Microsoft is looking at the market saying, yeah, we can keep generating these little bursts of sales. Like, hey, it's a shame that the console prices are higher now, but don't you want to get it before we raise those prices again? And I just think now is a really good time to start looking at your gaming hobby, at your entertainment, and all the fun things that you can do. All the fun that you can have. I just did, you know what? In celebration of Microsoft raising prices, I'm going to do something kind of silly here. Y'all get ready. I'm going to put something in the chat. You maybe have this, you might not. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's going in the chat. Just put that right there. I just bought the Remedy collection on Humble Bundle for, I think, $28. And it had every game Remedy has made, including Alan Wake 2. I've been reluctant to buy Alan Wake 2. I was one of those nerds. I was really hoping that we would see Alan Wake 2 maybe come to Steam. Like if I just waited it out a little bit longer, I know Epic, they were never really going to do that, but I hoped. So I waited just a bit to see. I think Epic is fine with Alan Wake 2 not selling as much, but it's an exclusive to the Epic Game Store. But Alan Wake 2 is still like a $60 game. And I got every game Remedy has made. Max Payne's, Control, Alan Wake 1, Alan Wake Remastered, Alan Wake 2 for half the price of just buying Alan Wake 2. If you love gaming and you're not a PC gamer, boy howdy are you spending so much more on games. Like what Nintendo gives you, what Microsoft and Sony give you, PC gaming just wins, especially if you can be just a little bit patient. Like, yeah, you didn't buy RoboCop Rogue City at launch. It was only a $30 game at launch. It was already on sale if you knew where to shop. But you could have picked it up a month ago for $4. The entertainment value of RoboCop Rogue City is insane for $4. So maybe look at getting yourself a little mini PC that's got a decent integrated GPU. You might need to scale down to 1080p gaming, or sometimes you might even need to hit 720p gaming to keep your frame rates higher. But you plug that into your TV and you're good. Start building up your PC catalog. Get those free games from GOG and from Epic Game Store. There's been a bunch of indie titles on Steam recently. I just shared another one on the private Discord that just looks like an awesome little retro 8-bit platformer. Brand new game. It will eventually, I think, cost $5. Developer put it out there in early access for free. Awesome. You know what's better than spending $30 on an indie title on a Nintendo Switch 2 is getting an indie title on PC for free. For free. So it's pretty great. I don't know if anyone jumped on that, but there is a string of letters and numbers, and maybe someone will enjoy that if you can figure out where those letters and numbers go, because it's definitely PC gaming related. We're really kind of running into this, so let me just kind of knock out this story here. I'm already horrifically disappointed in Samsung as a corporation. I don't like them, but also coming from Ars Technica, written up by Sharon Harding. Software update shoves ads onto Samsung's pricey fridges. So anytime we've got smart devices, it's pretty stupid. Like, it started with TVs, and now anything with a screen, they're going to start ratcheting this. It will come to our tablets. It will come to our phones. But now, you went and you got this kitchen, you did a remodel, everything's looking real clean, real sharp, stainless steel. I've got a screen on my fridge, wacky things there. I can leave notes for my family members and play games on it. And what's this advertisement that I see on my fridge? What's that? So any of those people, when we started complaining about Samsung putting in a bunch of notification ad spam on Galaxy phones, I want you to remember all of those bootlickers who were out there like, well, I'm not even bothered by it, and Samsung Galaxies are the best, and what I really like is that they serve ads for things that I'm really interested in. I really like it when, like they let me know about things that I would maybe want to buy. I don't mind if they rip off all of my consumer behavior data and sell it off to other brokers and stuff. And if they just give me things that are relevant to my interests, I like it when, if you've spent a lot on it, you shouldn't have to suffer ads. And I don't really know why we keep having to kind of lobster pot this. Like that'll be, well, do you want Samsung to make less money? Yes, I do. I want them to sell a product, and I want to buy that product, and I want them to leave me the F alone. It makes me so angry. Oh, Paranormal Bat, an ad to buy the same fridge again, of course. That's what I'm getting from Google. All the announcements like, hey, we saw you just bought the Pixel 10 Pro XL. Did you know you can buy other Pixel 10s? Thanks, Google. What I needed as an average consumer who just bought a $1,300 phone was to know that I could also buy more phones from you. Great. You're real good at this. It's awesome. Oh, I hate it so much. I'm gonna bounce off of that. I was ready to go off on another Samsung hate, 2 minutes of hate. Something that made me happy to see, and something that I'm really looking forward to on this next generation of phones that are going to be coming out like in what, another week or two. Let me get this up here. Oh, sorry, Geet Madden. In defense of Samsung Knights, the taste of leather is simply irresistible. You can't help but lick the boots. I love it. This one made me happy. Coming by way of Peter at GSM Arena, Vivo shares 4K 120 frame per second videos from the Vivo X300 Pro. I have been screaming about this since the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. One of the most important practical upgrades to camera sensors has been not just faster frame rate, clearing data off the sensor faster, but doing so with a much higher pixel density. So again, I showed it off on the Xperia 1 Mark II, which had 4K 120 slow motion. So it did not create a 4K 120 video file. It was a 4K file at 30 frames per second, but that's 1/4 slow motion. It captured the footage at 120 frames per second, but it wasn't able to save a 4K 120 and properly play a 4K 120 video file. It would save it as a baked-in slow motion with no audio. Now, on Vivos, on Xiaomi's, Samsung's, I think, do this respectably well too. I'm sitting there shooting 4K 120 as a native video file. It has the audio, it's real time. If you want something that looks ridiculously overhyped fluid in your video, you can do that. But then at any time, I can instantly cut from 4K real time to 4K slow motion. This is huge. This is a massive practical update to how good slow motion on a phone can be with incredible clarity. Because I really hate that on a lot of phones, you go into slow motion mode and you get this potato splotchy 1080p. I shoot 4K. I want 4K. I'm not as anxious about 8K. Every now and then I'll shoot 8K if I need to mix footage, blah, 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 blah. But 4K 120 is insane. So now, Vivo taking that up a notch. Vivo has been touting the advanced videography skills of the upcoming X300 series, and now it is even sharing some video samples. Here are two 4K clips shot at 120 frames per second. One uses Dolby Vision HDR, the other is 10-bit log. So for all these people like, oh, the iPhones, they take the bestest videos. You want to shoot HDR? You got 4K 120 Dolby. You want to shoot flat so you can color grade it yourself? You got 4K 120 10-bit log. Let me just kind of play these out here real quick while I continue to geek glaze over this stuff. But this like fireworks show, there's a model in the foreground. You see this really beautiful slow motion explosion effect behind her. Looks great. I really don't shoot HDR because it is such a pain to edit and it is such a pain to distribute. You never know if someone has got the right kind of screen to see what you, so it could look really garbage on their phone if you don't do everything exactly right with YouTube, and then even then there can be mismatches. So I still shoot everything in SDR and then kind of comment on it that way. But for me, the biggie is log. If I can shoot flat 4K 120 and then grade that, that is way more exciting. So here's a woman, she's in slow motion, skipping down a hillside, and then we see it go from that really flat log to this beautifully rich, color-graded look. And with 10-bit data on there, that's going to be nice. Again, this is coming, ostensibly coming from just the stock camera app. Like, you don't have to go and get another, like, you don't have to shoot Blackmagic camera or something like that. All of these sensors can actually perform even higher. I think the only phone that has kind of unlocked I think it's 12-bit, is the Pixel 10, which sucks because my Pixel 10, it's getting better. The recent software updates have helped, but I don't trust it for longer video recording sessions. My Vivo can shoot 4K 60 like nothing all day. The Pixel 10 still struggles and will fall into a lower frame rate to throttle down because of heat. 10-bit log, 4K 120 is kind of awesome. I'm really excited about that. But again, 4K 120 was always a massive feature. People only started giving it credit when Samsung and Apple did it. Sony was way ahead of the curve. And in fact, Sony's sort of HDR presentation is really flat. So when you shot 4K 120 on a Sony, you could get this really flat look with their different Sony Alpha color science. And you could get something that you could grade almost like a log video file. But again, this doesn't matter because no one really does anything with their cameras and no one cares about better camera stuff. And iPhones are the best for shooting footage anyway. And if you're going to shoot a movie, you shoot it on an iPhone because it's the best for video, because someone with millions of YouTube subscribers said it was the best for video. And that's what you should really care about. And like Vivo and Xiaomi are kicking butt right now. So we could have better stuff or we could just keep repeating the lazy truthiness. Pixels are the best cameras for photos and iPhones are the best for video. And you ask why and they're like, oh, because it's the best. But what about it? Like, do you love that auto exposure correction that iPhones bake into your video file? I mean, you got to learn how to like shoot around it and then use other apps and then you can turn it off. And then if you dig into this setting, you can change things. And no, I mean, that's not very good, but iPhones are the best for video. Oh, John Gao saying, I just tested on my Xperia 1 Mark II. I can actually record 4K 120 with audio. Does it? I actually haven't revisited the Xperia 1 Mark II in a while. Does it keep the video file in real time, though? Or is it 4K 120 stretched to 4K 30, and then the audio is just that warbled, garbled mess of slow motion audio? I'd just be kind of curious to know, because I don't believe you're getting per frame the audio experience. So if you were just to time ramp it back up, I don't know. I'm trying to do too much math in my head, and that's not really interesting. Watching me try and struggle with math in my brain. Farhan. Apple can't even give 4K 120 on the ultra-wide or telephoto camera, for crying out loud. Yeah, they can't. I don't know. I don't think the Vivo can either. I think the ultra-wide locks 4K 60. But I'll take 4K 120 on that telephoto. That's the one that gets me real lit up. That telephoto is such a good sensor. Get that out of the way there. So, this one leads us into our final topic. Oh, I gotcha. So John Gao is saying I was able to install Video Pro on the 1 Mark II. The clip is 120 frames per second playing back and 120 frames per second with normal audio. So I never tried doing that. So you took the Video Pro camera app from a newer Xperia, put it on the 1 Mark II, and that worked. So we've always been able to do this. If you'd had the sensor and the app to say, shoot 4K 120, we were doing that back on the Xperia 1 Mark II. Mark II. What is that, Snapdragon 865? Yeah? See how there's that thing? A bunch of nerds saying, oh, but who even wants better features on their phones? I like my phones to be basic and give me less so I can pay more for it. And Sony was out there blazing a trail that I didn't even know was that, was that future-proofed. But here we are. Let me get this out of the way. Let's see. Geet Madden. iPhone has 120 per second at 4K with HDR and 10-bit log, but only on the main lens on the 16 Pro, but they updated sensors in the 17 Pro. Maybe they do it in the newest one. We'll have to see. And Evictor Debs, it's interesting how much Apple creators prefer aesthetics over utility. You can really see that with the iPhone 17 release and the coverage. I feel it's been interesting. Just like I had to hit sporting goods, Dick's Sporting Goods store yesterday, and people were still in line at the Apple store at the mall to pick up their iPhones on Sunday. And so something is sparking. Like iPhone 17 is generating some kind of consumer interest. I think it is actually enough of an aesthetic change, because I don't remember people lining up for the iPhone 16 at our little mall. But there was the line and the security guards, and everyone was really like, you couldn't walk around the Apple store. You had to go to the opposite side of the mall. So I think something clicks there when the phone looks functionally different enough that you can hold it up as the newer phone, that seems to get a lot of iPhone owners more excited about buying the new phone. Let me get this out of the way there. So this leads us into our last story, where we can spend the rest of the podcast talking about some silicon, some chips. We're going to get kind of nerdy. TSMC hits Qualcomm and MediaTek with up to 24% price increase for N3P node, according to a new report. This is written up by Fawad Murtaza. The Apple A19 and A19 Pro, the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, and the MediaTek Dimensity 9500 rely on TSMC's cutting-edge N3P process node. According to a new report out of China, TSMC has increased the price of N3P by around 20% versus the previous gen. This price increase seems to have affected Qualcomm and MediaTek the worst. So we should expect... You remember at the beginning of this podcast, I said that comparing phones from 2024 to 2025, we're not seeing across the board upgrade. We're seeing some things get better, and then the manufacturer making compromises to rein in costs. I think we can be pretty confident that if the price of a Snapdragon or a Dimensity is getting 20% more expensive for Qualcomm and MediaTek, that those costs are going to be passed on to the phone manufacturers. So someone building a phone with a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 or with a MediaTek Dimensity 9500, if they're seeing a 20% hike in the component costs, I think a lot of manufacturers are going to say, well, how can we squeeze 20% out of the build materials, and how do we also increase prices to the consumer? How do we increase MSRPs and not make it look like we're squeezing them for more money when we're actually giving them less phone? For Apple, this looks pretty clear. They put an A19 Pro in the iPhone 17 Air, but they squeezed down the battery, so there's literally less battery in the phone, and they took out a whole camera sensor. So instead of having an A17 Plus, which would have been a really practical daily driver phone around that $1,000 price point, they are expensive, but it would have probably been the best battery life of any iPhone launched this year. They removed the 17 Plus and instead gave you the Air with one less camera sensor and half the battery capacity. I don't remember exactly what it is. I want to say it's between 30 and 50% smaller battery, something like that. Apple literally found a way to give you less and have you keep paying more. That is exactly what Apple executives said in the disclosures when the DOJ sued Apple for anti-competitive business practices. There are quotes from Apple executives saying, we need to put a stake in the ground. What features are good enough? I think we're giving consumers too much, and we need to find ways year over year to reduce, to regress on what we give customers. The iPhone Air is the realization of that executive greed. Apple's greed manifested by delivering us a thin phone, not a mini. We would still expect a mini to have 2 camera sensors and a decently large battery. An Air is something totally different. So I think we really need to prep ourselves. I was kind of on this page at the end of 2024. We need to be careful. Component costs are getting higher. Global instability is making product pricing more difficult. Trump's tariffs are definitely not going to help as we're constantly fighting chaos. And chaos means higher prices always. But now, knowing that there is so much activity over at TSMC, that TSMC is at capacity with their foundries, with their fabs, so they can charge whatever they want. Where else are you going to go to get a chip made? Are you going to go to Samsung? Probably not. So I have to expect that, one, we're going to still see prices rise. MSRPs are still going to get higher, but now we need to watch for every single phone that's released. What else are they going to cut to help rein in those build costs? Chip gets 20% more expensive. It's one of the most expensive components in the phone. You gotta squeeze something else somewhere else. And I think we're gonna see this push towards reining in camera tech. Who even cares if their camera sensors are good? People don't even care if their phone takes better pictures. So I think we're going to start seeing camera sensors get squeezed. We're going to start seeing options scaled down, camera sensor sizes. I think we're going to see some movement on newer and more aggressive battery technologies. I'm going to be really curious to see where else do we see these companies trying to manage their costs. Red hydrangea. But have you held the iPhone Air in your hands? So I did walk by the Apple store and I did pick it up, and I just don't care. Thin is not a thing. And the thing is, it's not that thin. If you've been playing with Android phones and iPhones for a while, that 1 millimeter difference in thickness against some of our other thin phones matters not at all. And what I really wish we saw more movement on, like I've got the video finally shot, are on things like this. This is like the little Vivo X200 FE. I actually think for a lot of the people who watch my show, you'd probably be better off with the X200 Pro Mini. But the X200 FE, this is not thick. It's like a fraction of a millimeter thinner than a Pixel 10 Pro XL, but it's really easy to hold. It's got a great base and grip, free of a case, because you got to put a case on an iPhone Air. It makes for a great camera experience, a great handheld experience. You have something that you can hold. And the battery in this teeny phone, we're talking something roughly the size of a Galaxy S25, not 25 Plus, not 25 Ultra, just the little Galaxy S25. The battery here is bigger than the battery on my Pixel 10 XL. And this, I think, would be a form factor way more popular with consumers. It's a smaller phone, not a bigger phone that's thinner. It is a smaller phone. It is a better communicator and like a 20% bigger battery over the Pixel 10 XL. This is so stupid. Twin folk. But what do you mean, Juan? The single lens Apple camera is like 36 lenses in one. Apple said so in their slideshow. I hate that so much. Oh, it's lens quality pixel cropping sensor. It's a 50 megapixel lens. Hate it. Hate it. From Michael C. Honestly, I don't use an iPhone, but if I had to, I would buy a used iPhone 13 mini and put a new battery in it. I gotta tell you, there was that era, the iPhone SE 2020. No, not the 2020. The original iPhone SE, which was built on the same frame as the iPhone 5S, is still one of the all-time best communicator phones ever made. I thought their commercials were stupid. Your thumb, it goes from here to here, and from here to here. But that was the phone. It was that phone, and it was the Xperia Compact. My top two picks. I knew I was going to be traveling. I've got a bag and a suitcase and a backpack, and I'm running through an airport, and I can do everything on that phone with my little stumpy thumb in one hand while I'm running to the gate. The iPhone 5S frame, the original iPhone SE, lasted so long for me because it wasn't a daily driver, but it was a brilliant weekender. Going down to the beach, I've got my cheap iPhone SE. I don't care. I'm not really doing a whole lot at the beach. The camera's okay. It's not great, but it's got a headphone jack. I can listen to my tunes and I can do everything on it. And the battery's only going to last me that afternoon because it's a tiny little iPhone and Apple is notorious for putting in undersized batteries. It was the best single day, take the load off your nicer phone, run through an airport communicator kind of experience. And there really isn't anything like that mainstream on the market today. And Apple saw they were still pulling in sales with the Mini, but not enough. And they had an initiative where they wanted to push towards removing features from phones. And they couldn't do it on the Mini, that would have been too aggressive, so they did it on the Air. It is the size of an iPhone Plus, but it's half of an iPhone Plus. So that brings us, this price hike is going to be concerning and something to watch out for, but that brings us to kind of the big news coming out of MediaTek this week. Getting ahead of Qualcomm's summit, we have a new chip on the horizon, and I'm hoping that we're going to see some manufacturers start pushing out devices. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be that harder first wave where they're going to reach out to a bunch of influencers who don't really talk about stuff, but they'll like hook up with someone who uses an iPhone, but they'll give them a Chinese variant of an Oppo, right? But the new MediaTek Dimensity 9500 is looking like an interesting sidestep from last year's Dimensity 9400. It's weird saying this year and last year, because technically the Dimensity 9400 was the chip launched in 2024. The Dimensity 9500 is the chip launched in 2025. It's just going to take us a while to see the global variants of phones reach, so that I think they'll probably come in the next couple months. But that's now the accelerated phone release curve here. So last week, I spent a little time struggling to describe. I actually listened back. I did not do a good job with the news last week on ARM's new platform. So the individual cores and components that go into a phone chip are getting totally relaunched and rebranded from ARM. So Qualcomm is trying to use their own cores in the Snapdragon X for their laptops and in the Snapdragon 8 Elite for their phones. They're using Orion cores. MediaTek is using ARM's designed cores, the ARM reference cores, right? So they're different CPUs, even though they try to attack similar situations. The big Orion core is trying to do a similar amount of work as the big ARM X core. Previously on the Dimensity, so I was holding up a Dimensity 9300. I just need a prop. I need something to do with my hands. I'm real bad at doing this without some kind of... Where is my Vivo? I use it all the time, and now I can't find it, and that's going to drive me crazy. I had like 2 other phones on my desk that could have done this, but I needed that Vivo. I don't have a prop. This is going to suck, y'all. So, last week we were talking about ARM. Now they have these C core designations. So there's a C1 Ultra, there's a C1 Premium, C1 Pro? Is it Premium and Pro? I need to look that up. Yes, C1 Premium, C1 Pro, and then like a C1 Basic. Guys, we got to get a little nerdy about the silicon. We're talking about the CPU in your phone. Prior to that, ARM had an X core and then 2 tiers of A cores. The main bulk of CPU components were based on 3 cores. Now ARM is moving to 4 cores, 4 tiers. So we had the ARM X925, that was their top of the line, and that's now analogous to the C1 Ultra. Then we had the 700 series cores, and that's analogous to the C1 Pro. And then we had the 500, the little low power efficiency cores, and that is analogous to the basic C1. The reason why MediaTek was so exciting, I'm gonna hold up this Vivo. Oh wait, do I have it? Haha, hold on one second. I got a prop. Because what I do have with a 9400 is the non-pro Vivo. I got a bunch of Vivos on my desk right now. So this is the 9400, not the 9500. The 9400, the 93 and 9400 were notable because they're all big core designs. There are no tiny little efficiency cores. So on this chip, there are 4 of the X cores and 4 of the 700 cores. I think A720s. That's huge. This is like taking Apple's chip design and doubling the biggest, most powerful components in Apple's CPU. So Apple will often win single core races, but Android, especially MediaTek and Qualcomm, are doing a much better job of winning on multi-core. The clock speed of a CPU is not really the most important factor now. It's this new core size, I think, helps describe what the performance is going to be. 4 big X cores gets work done significantly faster on CPU-bound tasks than Qualcomm and Apple, which only have 2 massive-sized CPU cores. We've got double the big cores. Okay, that's the 9400. I'm going to pull up a little graphic now. The 9500 is a little different, and I'm a little concerned. So this is a slide from MediaTek, and I'm over here on this little chip diagram, and thankfully we don't see any little efficiency cores. There are none of the little C1 basic cores, but we have 4 of the C1 Pros. These are going to be similar to those A720s. The A700 cores are powerful cores, but they're now the new medium size. When we look at the bigger cores, this is what I'm concerned about. There is one C1 Ultra, and this is the replacement for the X925, and then there are 3 C1 Premium, and the Premium is the new upper middle core. Before we had X925, A720, A500. A520, I think the A520. We had 3. The 9400 has 4 of those X cores. Big, big, big cores. Now we've got C1 Ultra, C1 Premium, C1 Pro, and C1. So now we only get 1 of the biggest core, and we're getting 3 of these new upper medium cores. I have asked phone manufacturers, I've asked MediaTek PR directly, and I've also asked a secondary PR representative, someone who works for an ad agency that works with MediaTek. There is no literature that I can find on what this new 3rd tier core can do. If the C1 Premium can deliver nearly the performance of the old X925, I think we'll be in good shape. But I'm worried that C1 Ultra is huge. That's going to give us that higher single core speed. But then if the C1 premium is slower or less powerful than the X925, we might actually see in real world tests, in real practical tests, like I actually loaded an app and did work on an app, not just looking at Geekbench, not just looking at Antutu. I worry that the Dimensity 9500 could either be a lateral move or in some CPU bound tasks could be a downgrade. Until we can see what this new CPU core, how it ranks against last generation CPU cores, we could be in a weird kind of holding place. Like this could be lateral. It could end up being a bit of an upgrade, or when all four bigger cores are working hard, it might not be able to get as much work done as last generation's X925 configuration. I am sorry that took so much explaining. I'm not good. If I had had the ability or the capability to make a cute little graphic and like diagrams and stuff, I totally would have done that. I just don't have that artistic skill. But it makes me really concerned that ARM has a new initiative, but there's been so little information detailing how do the new C cores compare against the last generation X and A cores. And we can't know that until devices are in people's hands and they've gotten some updates, they've gotten some performance improvements and some polish. The Vivo performance on the 9400 was pretty bad in that first week that I had one. The first one I had was the Oppo Find X8 Pro. And the first couple of days that I had that phone, it was demonstrably worse than using a Dimensity 9300. And then it got this little, just like, I want to say it was like a 20 megabyte patch. And suddenly, the Oppo Find X8 Pro went from being one of the slowest premium phones I'd ever tested to being untouchable. The Find X8 Pro is still the all-time fastest phone I've reviewed and tested in any of my tests and comparisons. It trounces the Snapdragon 8 Elite powered phones that I've used, and it embarrasses Tensor 5. It is not close. And it's all because of the CPU core configuration. It is just an absolute monster with all of these huge CPU cores ready to dig in to tasks. So we've got a lot of unknowns there. I'm very interested in seeing how this new Mali G1 Ultra GPU can perform. There's definitely a lot of space dedicated to this. It is a massive component on this SoC. But the other one that I think is kind of interesting, just going back to this diagram here, MediaTek has not gotten a lot of credit for how good their data throughput has been. So, I mean, we've got all these specs, like we're getting LPDDR5X 10667 RAM and UFS 4.1, 4-lane UFS 4. I mean, like all of the things that help contribute to moving information from storage through RAM, get crunched up by the CPU and back to the user. I don't think MediaTek has gotten enough credit that in one chip generation, they went from being one of the worst performers to being the best. Their improvements to things like file access and compression have been incredible. What your chip can do to squish information or unpack information, radical improvements. But putting all of those parts and pieces together, the other part of their strategy is going with redundancies. So we've got really big CPU cores and then just sort of medium big CPU cores. We've got a huge GPU in relation to the rest of the chip. And then we've got an enormous performance NPU. So the part of the chip that's doing all that machine learning stuff, on-device AI kind of stuff, is getting a massive new chunk. So this is what I think the compromise might be. Because we're not using 4 of all of the biggest CPU cores, we're dedicating more space on this chip for a massive NPU and a second NPU. So there's this massive machine learning core and then a tiny, they call it the super efficient NPU. So huge NPU and a little teeny tiny NPU, and we still have room on this chip to have a built-in modem, integrated modem, 5G modem on this. So we might be trading. I would personally have preferred having bigger CPU cores and kind of keeping up with just whatever the NPU was doing on the 9400. But if any of these tasks can be moved to the phone, that would be a really nice perk. I think it's kind of stupid that we were building progress on things like pixel magic eraser style editing, and now almost every manufacturer, every phone manufacturer has put that up in the cloud. So I really like Xiaomi, you know, you kind of wiggle your finger around something, it selects an object, it uploads data to the cloud, it pulls it back down, and then that vanishes. I actually think Xiaomi's AI style processing like that and content fill is competitive, sometimes better than what I can get out of a Pixel. But if we could just put a massive NPU in the phone chip, I'm really hoping that more of this kind of consumer-facing editing, generative AI, content fill, speech-to-text translation, all of that will start coming more and more and more to the device, and less will have to go up to the cloud. MediaTek has no control over that. MediaTek is building a chip, and they're hoping that their hardware and engineering partners are going to utilize all the parts on that chip. We need the apps to look at this chip and say, whoa, you've got this huge NPU. Let's see what it can do. So that's the kind of stuff I think is really exciting. Also, a super efficient tiny NPU, that could be really cool for things like subject detection in your camera app. You know, like how you do face and eye tracking autofocus, you don't need massive compute power for that. You don't need massive machine learning performance for that. So now we can offload that to a tiny little NPU, just lock on someone's eye, and you know you're not burning extra battery off of that SoC, off of that NPU. So that was a lot of explaining. I'm so sorry. I am not as clever or as succinct as Dr. Ian Cuttress over at Tech Potato. I'm going to put another shout out to his channel. But again, nothing that we're hearing about, Geekbench scores, Antutu scores, none of that matters. Literally none of it. No one was holding up the Find X8 Pro as being the fastest phone in Android land. Other people were like, oh, it's probably a Samsung, or you know, this Xiaomi got a bigger Antutu score. None of that matters. When I put real work into a real app, nothing has touched the Find X8 Pro. Nothing. CPU bound. When I put a real game on a phone screen, nothing is touching the Snapdragon 8 Elite. If you want an entertainment gaming device, probably should be Snapdragon. If you want a massive content creation work phone, it should probably be a Dimensity. But just going through, again, we were talking about earlier, it would be nice if we could just keep the same compute power and just lower our energy usage. But this is, again, this is kind of where I'm getting a little concerned about this configuration. Because look at this slide from MediaTek. 3rd generation all big core CPU. 32% higher single core performance, 37% lower CPU power use. They're not talking, there is, on this slide, there is no stat saying bigger multi-core performance. And they break this down. We've got 1 ARM C1 Ultra, 3 ARM C1 Premium, 4 ARM C1 Pro. So we might have arrived at, we're using a C1 Ultra so we can score better in single core performance. I'm hoping the C1 Premium is at least close to last generation's X925. And that combination altogether is going to result in a lower CPU power use. I'm just really hoping it's at least a comparable, like again, that it's not a downgrade. I just don't want the Dimensity 9500 to be slower in these tasks than the 9400 was. Yeah, and they've got a whole bunch of things like, 57% improved object detection and 50% reduced power consumption of running AI models. And I don't know what AI models you're running on your phone, but for me, the biggies become things like subject identification in photos and subject identification in the camera app. I mean, immediately, the fastest thing that you can take a look at, like, if I pull up, I had a cute little photo, my dog sitting on my wife's lap, and just like this cute little pose, and they're both watching TV together, and I just long press, boom, subject identified, and I can take this, let me do it again, I can take this and slide it around to a little folder, and I can edit that. It's cut immediately out of the photo. That's subject identification in your gallery. That happens on device. Now, let's say it is 57% faster than what I just showed you there. I touched my dog in a photo, and it was almost instantaneous that my OnePlus was able to identify the dog and cut it out of that photo. But I guess it's going to be super cool if it happens 57% faster than almost instantaneous. Sorry, I get real snarky about stuff like this. Faster cache, 2 times the write speed, 4-lane UFS performance is 4 times fast. Sorry, let me show the slide. 4-lane UFS 4 is 2 times faster read and write speed, 40% faster large AI model loading speed. I'm still trying to find, and I would love anyone to give me a suggestion. I've asked MediaTek directly, what is a practical app that people can use to do things that I can show twice the read-write speed of the previous chip? Don't give me a benchmark that just spits out numbers of how many megabibbles and giggle pips that you can read from the storage. If I plug a portable hard drive into my computer and I move files to that, I can demonstrate how one drive is faster than another drive, right? And that's something that people do with their drives. They take a big group of files and they move it from one computer to another computer. I can't really do that on Android because MTP and the USB port get in the way. It kind of flattens out the performance. Some phones will still demonstrate some performance advantages, but we're not really getting the full impact of faster storage on a phone when we do something like that. So is there something I can do on the phone that will properly demonstrate a noticeable, tangible, or trackable difference? Like, if there's a game that takes forever to load, is there a way that faster storage can be isolated and I can say, look, this phone has UFS 4, this phone has UFS 4.1, and I timed loading this level in this game, and you can see that because of the faster storage, this phone beats the other. That would be cool. But I can't think of, I can't find a test where I can isolate storage speed or machine learning speed as a practical benefit to the consumer. GPU, of course, they're also getting the big numbers and the big updates and the big improvements. 33% improved peak performance at 42% improved energy efficiency. Twice the ray tracing performance, but again, no one has been able to tell me what games on Android really benefit and you can really see any kind of ray tracing. And I'm also putting that earnestly out to my audience too. What game can I play where I can show ray tracing turned on and off? Any game. please let me know. Big numbers, twice the NPU performance, 42% reduced power, agentic AI, support for Gemini and Gemma, AI Core, Light RT, multimedia breakthrough. We're talking 4K proper hardware support for background blur in video at 4K 60. So that'll be pretty cool. And of course, we're seeing improved support for 4K 120, 200 megapixel capture. Again, proper hardware support for these camera sensors that are coming out with insane megapixels, that kind of stuff. So all of this is now being properly baked into the Dimensity 9500. I have every expectation that this chip is still going to be a monster at media and content creation. I think it's still going to fall behind Qualcomm in gaming, not because the chip is really less powerful, but because there's so much less optimization for MediaTek's GPU than there is for Qualcomm's GPU. But all in all, this is still looking like it's going to be a really interesting year for the silicon. And the last question that I have is, will it be a side grade? Will it be a CPU performance upgrade? Or I'm really hoping it won't be, but is it also, will we have a situation where it might end up being a CPU downgrade? So let me take a drink of coffee. I can kind of go through these last things here. I know that is a lot of silicon to talk about. And of course, Qualcomm, I think, is going to be announcing their 8 Elite Gen 5 tomorrow, right? Isn't that Summit? I love it so much because you're going to have a whole bunch of influencers on the ground really talking to Qualcomm and getting the scoop. And for that week, they won't be wearing their Apple Watches. Hey, I am popular YouTuber and I love hanging out at Qualcomm and MediaTek and look at this new phone that I'm holding. And then the day after it's, oh my gosh, I'm so crazy excited to unbox a new iPhone. Oh my God. But you know, all they care about is traffic. You might as well get inauthentic traffic from astroturfed influencers. And those numbers will be bigger. Okay, Red Hydrangea saying apparently PUBG and War Thunder are the popular ones that are ray traced. I searched on the web. That sucks. See, I have a really hard time with that because I can't control consistent tests on tragically terminally online games. Like in PUBG, how do I show you the same frame rates, the same settings, the same locations, and the same effects of ray tracing if I can't control how I launch each round? So I've got to find something that will, something that'll be consistent. Like for example, when I'm showing you frame rates for video games, increasingly I'm using games like Alien Isolation and Grid Legends. From the same developer brought those to Android. They're both brilliant PC ports. And the company that did the PC ports is incredible at moving games from console and PC to Android. But I can show you the exact same starting level in Grid Legends. You've got your damaged racer and you're on a street track, and like you can see the sunlight effects and you can see the reflections. You know, parts of your car are wobbling and falling off. I can show you that same intro every single time. And in Alien Isolation, I can show you the same starting position every single time. And that's what I need. I need something that I can consistently say, look, this phone runs Alien Isolation. Let's be specific. Look, my super expensive Tensor powered Pixel 10 Pro XL can kind of run Alien Isolation at like sub 30 frames per second. This chip cannot keep Alien Isolation at 30 frames per second in the intro, where all you're doing is taking a shower, getting dressed, and then going to the little dining area so that you can get your mission briefing. It can't keep 30 in that, so it definitely won't keep 30 later on in the game where you have more aggressive lighting, fire becomes an effect that you'll see on screen, and you're running down corridors to escape a xenomorph. You really do want at least 60 frames per second on Alien Isolation, because that game gets real dangerous real fast. One of the best horror titles of all time. But then I can hold up something else, like my Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and with just a little tweaking to the graphics settings, at a higher graphics quality than on the Pixel, I can easily hit 90 frames per second. If I reduce the graphics quality below what the Pixel can do, sub 30, then I can hit over 100 frames per second. And you know what's kind of cool when you're running away from a xenomorph is having buttery fluid frame rates that start to match the refresh rate of the display. You see, that improves the gaming experience even on a mobile device. It's pretty rad. You should really give it a try. I very much enjoy that crystal fluid look when I'm gaming, even when I'm gaming on a phone. That is performance that my Steam Deck literally can't match. So that's the kind of thing, like I want to be able to show ray tracing on and off, but I want to be able to show it in exactly the same scenario so that we have comparable data as we move from bit to bit to bit. From Wikazol, but Alien Isolation is too scary. But that's why I only show the intro. I'm not showing the how intense the gameplay gets. It's pretty awesome. From Gabaletta, I think Diablo Immortal implements some kind of ray tracing. That I need to check out. That one, I bet you I could probably keep a consistent, like just wipe out my character every single start. That's not a game I'm really gonna live in. I might check that out. Thanks, Gabaletta. I'll see if there's some kind of see if there's some kind of way that I can kind of just keep replaying an intro level the same way. Gabaletta also saying, I think almost all games that have some form of ray tracing are region locked to China. That one I've definitely run into. There have been a lot of Chinese titles. Like when I search for this stuff, I immediately get 3-year-old articles about Chinese games, which to me sort of validates no one really cared about ray tracing. Like, developers aren't putting it into games in the United States. So, great. Brian Billings, again, the NPU performance is 57 better. Now it'll be 57% more instantaneously. From Whale Buazdia, I think object identification like this happens in the background. That's why it feels instantaneous. No, I don't believe that's true. So on an iPhone, when you're using that depth tracking hardware, that's where it's saving information based on the depth of the objects in your photo frame, and it can work on that data really, really quickly. I just demonstrated that on a OnePlus 13, which is not, to my knowledge, is not doing any kind of Z camera or depth tracking. It is all subject identification in the photo. And some photos will take longer than others. Here, let me try and pull something up where it's not a human and a dog sitting next to each other. And again, I haven't done this before. Here's one where the dog's back is to the camera, and I'm just gonna tap on that. And it highlighted the dog and the cat that he's showing down with. There's a neighborhood cat that likes to visit our patio, and it happened instantaneously. Here's a dumb one of my face, instantaneously. So I don't think it's pre-scanning. I'm not seeing, one, I think that would also contribute to things like battery stats, and I never see gallery in any of my battery stats, even expanding battery stats and using third-party apps. This is literally just that subject identification that we would see from a camera app being employed to a static image that's already been generated without any additional data contributing to that scan. We're doing it faster in any photo in software than what we were doing by using depth tracking hardware. So I think Apple's solution to this is actually now the clumsier way of doing this. But I don't think it's, and someone please correct me if I have this wrong, I don't think it's an aspect of the camera app constantly scanning and pre-selecting subjects for that kind of subject identification. It was a really rambling way of addressing your comment. I don't think it's that though. But if someone can show me or demonstrate, I'd love to see. So from Gabaletta, honestly, if we end up losing maybe 10% performance, but it ends up using 30% less power, I would be okay with that. I mean, I guess you're right. And I guess we've been saying things like that, and I'm such a nerd. I want all the performance that I've become accustomed to when I pick up my Vivo and that 9400 and I put a couple little video clips together in LumaFusion and I push render and it's done so fast. I just don't want to lose that. So, but you're not wrong. If I put together a 90-second video clip and it takes 10 seconds instead of 9 seconds, I guess I'd still be fine with that if it meant I was pushing that phone legitimately into 3 days of use. Because on my OnePluses and my Vivos, when I'm using them as phones with the cell radios active, I count on them being 2 sun up to sundown days. If you could tell me that now that's going to push my battery life into maybe a third part of a day before I'd seriously be looking at having to plug in and recharge, you're not wrong. I guess that could be cool. And from Whale, I mean, we definitely have to keep an eye on these trends. I think today's hardware may be obsolete when local AI like Magic Eraser, translation, speech to text, etc. hits smartphones. Because it's not going to be all at once, though. Like, you think about a lot of the things that draw people to Google Photos, where you can organize your photos by faces, right? You can search in the photo for certain topics. Like if I search for dog on all of the photos that are in my G drive, there's an AI process that's looking for data in the photos to try and select out all of my photos that have dogs in them. But I am finishing up a video on a new NAS that has, I think the NPU, it runs at like 6 tops. Like, this is a old, like a 5-year-old ARM chip, a radically underpowered NPU, and it can now use those AI models on underpowered hardware, and it can actually deliver results faster because it's not getting information up and down from cloud storage. So when new features come, like a new chip comes out, there's crazy, radical, more powerful NPU, we're not really doing anything with that NPU yet. We're just hoping that eventually app developers are going to start leveraging that hardware, doing that stuff on device, but that's still going to have a net benefit for older chips with less powerful NPUs. Like, it's still a trickle down. It's the same thing with ARM chips. We've shown this. I've tried to talk about this and show this, but like the last generation of Windows powered ARM PCs before the Snapdragon X Elite have all gotten significant performance upgrades. So I don't have it right here at my side. Oh no, I do. It's right over here. I'm gonna try not to drop because I had something on top of it. So here's my little Robo Incala tablet. This has the Snapdragon. Ew, there's stuff on the back. Oh, that's gross. I spilled something. Oh, yeah. I had a soda and the condensation, and when I went to pick up the cup kind of failed, but part of it got on the back of my Robo Incala, so that's super gross. Sorry, I'm holding up something super gross. But this has the older 8CX chip. Wasn't very powerful. We were talking like 10th gen Core i3, but with all of the updates and improvements to ARM processing for Windows in general, this thing has gotten significantly more powerful. I think the same thing will happen with NPUs. Even though this newer NPU is coming out. Oh, it's going to make all of our older stuff obsolete. That's actually not what's going to happen. If we leverage the NPUs better, older devices will actually get more powerful. Just newer devices will be even more powerful than that. We need the developers to start using this hardware. Where was it? From Michael C, was it Battlefield that recently said they weren't doing any ray tracing? What was it, the new Call of Duty? There was some video on Bellular News, but not using it, they could lessen requirements to play. I don't know. I haven't kept track of any of those franchises. And I mean, like, I think one of the problems that I have, I grew up with a mom who was a computer scientist. She used to like code back in the Bell days. And I would listen to her talk about solving problems, but having limited resources to solve problems. So your code had to run efficiently. And when I look at gaming, it seems we're very impressed with frame generation and upscaling tricks, and developers can then kind of push, and they don't have to optimize as much. So your game can't run natively at a higher resolution, but we worked really closely with NVIDIA so that we could use DLSS to upscale. So your GPU is actually making a lower resolution file look like a higher resolution image, but we're not actually improving that raster as much. And that to me is one of the kind of the bummers is, I think when Control came out and that first generation of ray tracing GPUs came out, and we were looking like dynamic lighting and shadows and effects and reflections, like, okay, this could be really cool. And then we kind of fell into this pit of not emulating, but you know what I mean, sort of synthesizing better performance, but not really improving performance. And I wonder, like, how much that's going to matter to people. Gamers seem upset about certain scores and not others. I don't know where that goes from there. Ray tracing on phones, I think, has been pretty much a bust. I don't think people have been too legitimately interested in that. But when you make a big claim, like, you're still improving the ray tracing performance on these GPUs, who's using it and what does that really look like? I'd love to test it. Because then you could actually say, like, listen, look, I'm getting 100 frames per second in this game with ray tracing off, and I'm getting 50 frames per second with ray tracing on. Can you tell the difference between these two video clips? Which one has ray tracing on, which one has ray tracing off? And if someone can say, oh, I like the way that looks because of light and shadows and stuff like that, they might want to make that compromise in frame rate. But I can't even test it. I mean, PP Joker, there are people who love just like DLSS can kind of eke out more performance on less expensive stuff, but PP Joker says DLSS feels like a fake way to improve performance, in my opinion. And I think that's one of the concerns is we're paying more and more and more for components like GPUs, but the core number crunching, let's pump out an image performance, it's still improving, but it seems to be taking a back seat to how do we synthesize the look of better performance? So we'll have to see. From Mr. Maug, when MediaTek mentioned console level ray tracing, that worried me because sometimes aren't that good at ray tracing. I don't think any of the consoles have been super great. Like the promises of like 0 load times because we're finally putting in an SSD and beefing up the GPU. I don't know. I mean, I know like I've spent a lot more on my PCs than I ever have on my consoles, but I've never really just like dug into a console experience and said like, wow, that is so amazing. Because anytime I've been able to compare, it's just gonna look better, play better, look smoother, faster frame rates, higher resolution on my workstation. And I'm not running a super beefy gaming rig. I mean, I'm doing better than most out there, but I'm not like, $10,000 HEDT gaming system. I'm a video editing rig that does a decent job of playing games. So even then, when I take that compromise and I'm looking for portability and convenience, I'm fine scaling all the way back to something like a Steam Deck. And when I need to, I can marry those and play from my workstation on my Steam Deck. And that's been working great. So I'm good. I don't know. I've really fallen off any of the other consoles. We tapped out on PlayStation 4. I haven't had an Xbox since the original Xbox. I'm really not particularly interested in getting a Switch, knowing that a phone from last year is probably more powerful already than a Nintendo Switch. I want to see what can I do on a phone and marry those purchases. Because if all I need to do is get a nice phone and buy a controller for that phone, then if I can still play a lot of the games I like, I don't need to buy a Switch. So, I don't know. It's kind of messed up. So anyway, we're going to be getting news. We'll have to talk about it next week. We'll be getting news about Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. I'm sure we're going to see big claims and big numbers and 40% more this and 20% less that. And all the people who are going to rush out to fart their Antutu scores and their Geekbench scores, because I can't even believe it. Like, the iPhone Air, it's got like a bigger single core score, and that's, I really need that in my iPhone Air. That means nothing. It literally means nothing. It tells you zero about what that phone can do when you really run an app and you really put it on. Remember, for the last 2 years, Qualcomm has generally outperformed MediaTek in Geekbench for CPU scores. Every single time I pit them head to head, MediaTek wins in video editing and compression. MediaTek now wins in file compression with like a file compression app. MediaTek has been winning on batch photo processing. And it gets close, but MediaTek tends to eke out small wins for things like audio processing. When you pick up a Google Pixel and you use Google Photos, MediaTek is going to destroy a Pixel. If you want to do something cute, like just trim a little off the beginning and the end of a video, it's not close at all. So, stay tuned. We got a lot to talk about. I've got some comparisons coming up. First comparison's probably going to be against a Vivo for my Pixel. I've got that other Vivo video ready to go. Some headphones. I'm so excited to be talking about some headphones again. So stay tuned. Lots of news. Next week, I know it's going to be a pajama podcast next week, but we will talk some Snapdragon because I'm really curious to see if they change up their big core strategy. I'm really curious to see if Qualcomm continues to veer more like Apple with 2 big cores, or if they're trying to make some kind of intermediary play like MediaTek or medium-sized cores or faster clock speeds. So there will be a little extra silicon conversation next week as well. Folks, thank you so much. I know this one got tough. We started out real heavy with the politics news, and then we ended real nerdy on the silicon news, but that's the kind of range that I like to have. I really like being able to kind of cover that variety of topics because it's all tech. As much as we can, if we can hold on to some of these other tech avenues, it makes us better prepared for changes coming. It makes us more prepared for wacky things happening in the stock market. And it kind of keeps us setting our sights on the next generation of gadgets and products and services. It helps. I think it helps on all fronts. And I'm so glad that we had people in this chat who were down to contribute to those conversations. So stay tuned. More to come. Be well. Be safe. It's crazy. Every day is chaos, so just kind of preserving your mental health and holding on to your sanity, maybe that's enough for a day, for a protest. I don't like what's going on in the world, but I'm just going to hold on to some nugget of sanity. Might be all you need to do today. It's that wild out there. So I'll be back next week. We're going to have a chill conversation. I really want to kind of dig into a little gaming talk, maybe some movies and TV talk too. And yeah, we'll figure that out next week. That's a problem for next week, Juan, not today, Juan. So I'll catch you back. Be safe. Take care of yourselves so you can keep taking care of others and be that amazing tech neighbor I know you can be. Maybe be that tech neighbor who gets their family and friends onto Mastodon instead of continuing to get ratcheted by TikTok. Maybe that's your homework for this week, is anyone that you can get on Mastodon. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe, take care. I love you all, and I'll catch you back.